Hey, everybody, it is Andy Smith, 35-year veteran of the comic book industry now that it's 2026. Crazy. If you don't know me, I've worked for Marvel, DC, Image, Acclaim, Valiant, CrossGen, so on and so forth. And I've written a couple books on drawing. Drawing Dynamic Comics is the main one. And today, I'm going to do a little inking tutorial in Clip Studio, which is it used to be called Manga Studio, and now it's called Clip Studio, and it's great if you just like to work digitally. They have a version for an iPad. I assume they have a version for other tablets as well. And of course, they have the desktop version. And I actually found this piece. Let me do this. There we go. Drawn by the great Al Plastino of Superman fame back in the day. And I love it. I think this is awesome. To me, this is what pencils should look like. In this day and age, you don't see a lot of inkers anymore. It's really rare. Most guys do their own pencils and inks. And a lot of guys are just digital now. I think Jorge Jimenez is mostly digital. Dan Mora, I believe it's digital. Nothing wrong with that. I like having original art. So if I were to ink this for something that I want to keep, I would print it out in non-repro blue on Bristol and ink it traditionally. But I like playing around with the inking tools and Clip Studio, and I thought it would be fun to kind of go through this with you guys. So once I open it up, I'll look at the image resolution because this was something I found online, so it could be small. So it is. It is, let's see, 11 inches by 16 inches, but it's only 72 DPI. 72 DPI is way too low. So I'm going to bounce it up to 350. I'm going to take the height down to 12 inches, though. Let's see. Wait. Okay, so right now it's 16 inches. I want to take it down to 12, which should automatically adjust. That's weird. It has the width at 1 inch. That's odd. What if I want the width at 11? Then it has the height at 3. So let's do this. Oh yeah, I'll just scale it down this way. Till I get to the 12 that I want. Now, I'm not an expert in Photoshop, but I definitely know a lot more about Photoshop than I do about Clip Studio. Just to let you guys know. So this will be a learning process. I've done inking in Clip Studio. I've never really done coloring or anything. And that's not what I'll be doing today. There, 8 by 12, perfect, 350. Okay. So let's see what we got. There we go. Now you can see it's not that blurry. But I still don't mind this because to me, this is what pencils are. You know, the job of the inker is to do finishes, to tighten up the pencils. You'll see the artist's style. So I'm not going to ink this whole piece. I'm going to use a few different tools to show the different looks. I'll probably concentrate on Superman's face, torso, maybe a little bit of the umpire here, baseball dude. But I just want to show the different tools and kind of what they can do. So I've got this where I want it to be. Let me hit save. Guys, remember, saving is your best friend, so you don't lose anything if something crashes. So in the layers palette over here, I already created a new layer that I'm going to ink on. I'm going to take the opacity down on the pencil layer so I can see clearer over it. Now, by doing that, you can see that you can see the checkerboard behind it, which can get annoying. So I'm going to create another layer and fill that with white. I think I can do advanced fill. Let's see. Yep. And then I'm just going to put that as the bottom. And now you can see that the opacity is lower. I can still see everything depending on your eyes. You know, you can mess with the opacity some. I think that works fine. I'm going to rename that top layer to inking or inks, whatever. You don't even have to rename it. It's up to you. And then one of the things is digital, you can blow up as big as you want. Now that's a trap, because if this was for reproduction, you could blow this head up, for instance, that big, right? And ink it. The problem is you could get too noodly with details, and then when it prints, some of the line work you did won't even show up, or it'll be a mess. So it's good to, you know, you could try to ink it regular size, or the size that it is that you scaled it to. And mine was around 8 inches. So this is what you're seeing here. This is about 100%. So if I was on my desk inking this traditionally, this is how big it would be, and I wouldn't be able to zoom in on it and stuff like that. Now, I will say, I do like being able to zoom in some. So I find that's pretty good. And you know how you can rotate paper when you're inking or drawing traditionally? Well, you can use the little rotate tool down here at the bottom to rotate as well. Sometimes I just keep it the way it is, straight up and down, or I'll do a little rotate, 'cause this is kind of how my paper usually is. Anyhow, I'm going to start with the brush, see how that looks. You can see right here, and I can just do a couple sample things. That's pretty small, you know, for something this size. So I'm going to use a bigger brush, maybe the 20. That's pretty good. And I'll just start around here. And, you know, this is pressure sensitive, of course. Now, the cool thing with Clip Studio is over here on the left-hand side, you've got brush size, opacity, which I keep at 100, brush density, what I keep at 100. Now, they have this thing called stabilization. Stabilization is what basically it stabilizes the line. So if you're not great at pulling a brush line, it'll give it, it'll smooth it out. If you lower it, like right now, I've got no stabilization and still not bad, but I've been using a real brush and real ink for, you know, over 30 years. So, but I still do some stabilization when I work, right around a 13. Starting, ending, I don't even mess with any of this stuff under starting, ending, brush size, brush density, space, thickness. Never messed with it. So I just leave it at none. So anyhow, getting back to the inking, this has a general light source of, actually boosting the stabilization up some, of just overhead lighting. So one thing you can do is, and when I started at the Kubert school, I was already using a brush, but I had brush control, but having brush control and knowing where to do the thick and thins are two totally different stories. And one of the things I learned quickly was when there's just generic lighting like this, just this ambient lighting where it's coming from above, if you start at the top thin and then go thick on the forms, you can't really go wrong. And I like beefier outlines and stuff as well. So thin, and as it's coming down, I apply pressure, thick. And just to turn this off, you can kind of see the thin, thick. And in here, this is the underside of his forearm. So I'm going to actually do the whole thing kind of thick. And now with Clip Studio, the thing is your brush size, my brush size is a 20. So no matter how hard I press, that's pretty much the thickness it's going to be. If I want to get thicker lines than that, I would have to increase the brush size. So let's see. Let's try that. Let's get that out of there. Let's go to a 30 and see what happens. I'll do the underside of his bicep here. Not bad. Don't really like it. And the nice thing is you don't need whiteout. You just hit Control Z and it's gone. So let's do that again under the bicep. There we go. That I like. And the thing with Wayne's pencils is there's a lot left open to interpretation. So like I said, I'm going to do this a few times with a few different tools just to show the difference. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. And he's got the little sleeve there. His hand coming down. Oh yeah, this is good stuff. And I like keeping the brush the same size. I could go, oh, these fingers are smaller, the details, and lower the size of the brush, but can't really lower the size of the brush when you're inking with real tools. So that's why I'm not going to here. These are the bottoms of the fingers, not the bottoms, they're the top technically, but they're on the bottom. So I'm doing the lines a little heavier. This is on the top. So it's a little thinner. And when I ink, I like to get the outlines, not all that. If I was inking this for real, I would do the whole outline before I do anything else. But this is just kind of a tutorial. So I'm gonna do the outline of the torso and then start doing some of the inside. And actually, I'm gonna rename this layer brush inks. So then when I do pen, I'll keep it separate. It's saving. Okay. Now we're gonna wrap his chest around. The other thing I want to show too is that even though this is something that was drawn probably in the 50s, show that good inking can take something like this and really give it a nice shine to where you go, wow, that's not quote unquote as old school, you could say, and out of date. And I'm thinking about the anatomy as I'm inking and stuff. I'm not trying to change his outlines. Like that could be another whole tutorial where I take this and I treat it more like breakdowns where I really do add more of my style to it. It's got this shadow here, so I'll just outline it. And the other thing too is you can't see my arm, obviously. My wrist isn't really moving that much when I'm doing the inking. I'm pulling my whole arm, pulling with my elbow. And then the nice thing about digital too is I can flip over my stylus and erase out stuff. See, thin to thick. Once again, thin to thick, thin to thick. It's got this shadow here, which I'll just fill in real quick. And he's got the shadow coming from the cape onto his shoulder. That, and he's a little line there for the chest. This is the clavicles, but it also shows the outline of his costume. Let's do this bit of the cape underneath. So I'm going to go thicker and then really thick up there. And you can even see the line kind of broke up, which is fine. And I'm not going to do the whole border, but I'll do that bit of it. And then the nice thing is, no ink, you can take your magic wand, select that area to fill the blacks in, and see, It selects everything. It's selecting all the stuff on the layer below. I always forget about that. So if I turn that off and then select it, boom. And then what I do is, so it overlaps into the black sum, I expand the selection by 2 pixels, fill it in, bang. And then remember, save. Let's do his head sum, back to the brush. It's all about the pressure. See, thin to thick. Underneath the brows, thicker. The nose comes down underneath. Can be a little thicker. So you guys can see it a little better. I will blow it up some. Superman's kind of smiling. A little indication of the nostril. Lower lip comes out, so it's on the top, so I'm doing it thin. But then as it cuts back, give it a little thickness to it. Because you want to have contrast with your lines as well. If this was just dead weight all the way around, you could pull it off. And some artists do really well, but I like having contrast of thin line, thick line, thin, thick. To me, it's more interesting to look at. So on his chin, the top, thin, thick towards the bottom. This is the back of his jawline. And there's a shadow underneath, so I can do this whole thing kind of thick like that. Oops, I ran over. No problem. That's what the eraser's for. And I cut into that a little bit. No problem. Bring his neck down. Shadow underneath. Thick. Boom. Contrast. His ear. It's got the shadow back here. So I'll just outline that. That's his hairline. This is a little indication of neck muscle. And then the ear is hard to see. And this is where, even if this was high res and I could see everything, this probably isn't penciled much more than that. And this is where good inkers know how to draw, because I'm not just going to trace off what I see. I'm thinking about, well, what's the makeup anatomy of an ear as I do this. Inking is not just about tracing lines. I always say you need to think when you ink. And then everybody has this, basically the inside shape of the ears, this Y shape like this. And it tucks underneath. A little shadow there, a little shadow there, and then you can do a little bit there. And you see that Y shape. His eyebrows pretty thick. And the thing I like about Al Plastino, I almost said Wayne Boring, is he really indicates a lot with black. This eye in here, you can barely see it. So I'm using a brush, so I'm just going to really indicate it with black going in, throwing a little shadow here, the brow, throwing a shadow down, and then that indicates the lower lid and the eyeball going underneath. And then he's smirking some, so it'll be a little heavier here as the muscle pulls back. And in the mouth, I like doing stuff like that, where I'll turn off his pencils. You can see your eye will fill in the rest of that line for the mouth, you know? And then just by here looking at this, I see that I want to give a little more tap thickness to the top of that chin there. And like on the bottom of the chin as well. And then since I have this off, I might as well fill in this black shadow here. You can hit your shift key so you can do multiple selections in there. And then I expand it like I said. Okay. Paint bucket fill. Boom. All right. Let's do some more. I just want to finish up his head up in here because I want to get down into the chest and show how I do some of the rendering and stuff. So we got a baseball cap, underside of the brim, heavier, underside of the brim here, heavier, and it goes back up like that to the cap. And this is the outline of his brim, the top. So I'll do that light, wrap that around, and then the outside of his cap, kind of thick. And as I get to the top, I'm going thin. And then as I come back around, I'm going to apply some pressure to make it thicker there. His hair is mostly going to be black, so this can be thicker, doesn't matter. Now, the part of the brim that attaches to the hat here, going across, that I'm going to do thin. So let's see if I can pull this. Probably pull it pretty quick, too. Yeah, like that. That's good stuff. You got the seam right here. Now, if you're not great at pulling slick lines, a nice thing in Clip Studio is you've got these direct line tools. So you can select the curved one here. You can see how it shows that it tapers on both ends. So you can do that. You select the thickness, and what it does is, I'm going to do 8. I'll start it up here, and you pull it straight. I can already tell that's too thick, down to here, and then you bring your cursor up, and you can bend it out to the curve you want, tap, and it puts in a nice smooth line. But that is way too thick, in my opinion, to show a seam in the hat. So, and I also don't like how it tapers on both ends. So I'm going to have it taper at the ending point and not the starting point, and I'm going to make it a lot thinner. So since it's going to taper at the ending point, I'm going to start down here where it's not going to taper, pull up to here, give it the curve that I want, tap, and now you can see you've got this nice thin to thick. And other areas you can do that, like see on his hat here. Let me turn this off again. That's actually, I don't mind how the line breaks like that because it really shows that the light's coming from above. You get this good sense of light. It could print like that, but let's say you want a nice closed line. Well, you could use the same line tool I just did, and you would start it down here because it's not going to taper there, but it's going to taper up here, end it there, and pull it to match that curve, tap, and then look, you got a nice thin to thick right there. So I'll just leave that. But I didn't mind it the other way. All right, let's do his hair. Get back to the brush. See, he's got a little spit curl as Superman does. Like that. And then you can see some vague little highlights in his hair right up in here. So I'll keep those, and I'm not going to do a solid line with his hair coming out of his, how it pulls out of the forehead and stuff. And then on the side of his head here, I'm not either, because to me, it looks cooler and better and more like hair if you break it up like this. You can get kind of scribbly, and that I think looks cool. Now, when you do the white, there's a couple ways you can do it. Now, I will lower my brush a little bit for this area. Traditionally, if I was inking, I would leave the white and do the feathering, you know, pulling thin to thick like this, thinking about how the hair wraps around and creates that highlight there because it's not flat. You could do his hair flat black if you were going for a real graphic style. And then the baseball cap is throwing kind of a shadow down, so it the highlight goes away. Now, I could do it just like that, and the reason he didn't pencil it that way and he left underneath of the cap open, that kinda drives me crazy because it definitely wouldn't be catching light. So, I am gonna leave his hair like this because I think it'll look better filling in totally black underneath his cap, even though he didn't draw it that way. And then getting back to the hair, I don't even need to turn on his pencils again because he didn't really have much here. A little feathering like that. And then I could fill in the rest of this black and just see how it looks. This is a nice thing about Clip Studio because it's almost like I would do with whiteout as well. So I could fill it all in black like that and look at it and go, uh, do I like that? Is it too, does it flatten the form too much? Do I want to show more highlights in the hair? And of course, fill in some little stuff here. I don't really like all this. And if I wanted to, I could just select white. And same thing. If I was doing this on original, I could select white and use white out and go, you know what? I want to do some white highlight on the side of his hair here. And using the brush tool, and just like real white out, you can see some of the black below it. I could chunk in some highlights like that. And then you get a little bit of highlight because the side of his hair poofs up a little bit, and that would be where the highlight would be. Now, once again, I don't think that looks that great. So I like it better all black. So I'm just going to hit Control Z and erase it all out. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. And to me, the fun stuff is the torso. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this guy's head real quick, the baseball player, while I'm at it. Brush, get it back to black, get my brush size back. Then here, thick eyebrow. He's thicker under the brow. This guy's nose isn't as pretty as Superman's, but still. Then thick underneath the nostril, of course. A little thickness to it. Should be a little gap right there between the nostril hole and the nostril itself. Those are his teeth set back, bottom of the teeth. You can see the other side of his mouth. Because, guys, even on a side view, when the guy's mouth is open, you'll see the other side. If you don't, it'll be kind of flat. You can kind of see a little bit of teeth down here, so I'm going to indicate them. And the lower lip comes around. Lip comes around from the other side, down, wraps around, and then thicker. Chin comes out, down. His jaw line isn't as firm as Superman's. This guy needs a facelift. His ear comes down and around. And you can see a little better drawing of this ear that Al did compared to Superman. shadow underneath to the guy's jaw. I just fill that in. Don't need the magic wand. Nice thing about a brush, gets nice and big. His neck. Collar of his shirt comes down. Collar on this side. And then his eye, I want to keep consistent, so I'm not going to draw like the white of his eye either, since I didn't with Superman. A little black underneath. And then you can see his cheekbone and stuff because he's yelling. And then you'd want to fill in the other side of his mouth black, kind of like Al has it indicated. And then he's got some little crow's feet wrinkles here indicated, and then another wrinkle here on the side of his face. And now for these here, his jawline, because his jawline isn't as manly as Superman's, I'm going to ink these a lot thinner. So I will make my brush smaller because I want these to be kind of faint like that. And then even coming this way too. And then his neck muscle, same thing, a little thinner. Gets thicker as it goes down. His hair. Sideburns. His hair is not as clean cut as Superman's back here. When you do this stuff, you don't want it to be perfect because it's hair. Let's see. Side of his tooth. And then his nose, you can, a little more indication like that shows that he's kind of scrunching up his nostrils. And then over here on Superman, you can see he's got this feigned nostril line here. I'm going to do a little indication of the bottom of the nostril there. He's smirking, so he's going to have a dimple that you can see Al basically did, but very delicate. And then same with the cheek. You can see this swoop here, but it needs to be delicate. I'll show you what not to do. Not that. That's too heavy. Way too heavy. Because it shows like there's this deep cavern there. So you just want to have it nice and faint like that. And then even though Al also has a little bit of the brow indication here wrapping around. So same thing, nice and faint. And in here, this is something I just like to do. And this is where an inker can put in his own 2 cents. I like to do a little feathering stuff like this to show the jaw form wrapping around. So when you turn it off, you've got that. That's pretty freaking cool looking if you ask me. All right, now we'll get to the fun stuff. His chest. Control S. Remember, save, save, save. And once I turn that off, I notice I want a little more shadow under this cape fold here. So I'm going to do that like that. And then he drew it nice and simple. If I wanted to, I could do a little feathering here showing another wrinkle dip in the cape. So by adding this, if you were looking at the cross section, the cape goes down and then back around like that. That's what that feathering indicates. However, if I take this feathering out, which I'm going to do because I like it more simple like it was, without the feathering there, now the cross section of this cape is literally just that. The contour. All right, let's save it. Get down to the chest. Oh, wait, I got to finish his neck since I'm up here. So let me finish the neck. You can see some neck muscle coming in right here that Al did. So he's Superman. So it's going to be a little thicker than this guy's right here. So, and I'm going to bow it differently. Al has it bowing outward. I'm going to bow it inward, which will give his neck more of a thickness. like that. And that curve down like this, connect it. And this is where, once again, you can input a little bit of your style. So this little bit of feathering coming off his Adam's apple will give it some depth. And then I'll add another little feathering lines coming out of that. And that kind of shows it tapering and going away. So when you turn off that layer, his neck looks a little thicker. Back here on this neck muscle, so it's not just this hard line, do a little bit of feathering like that. And then I could keep it like this, which I think I will, but just to show you, if I wanted to, I could show the other side of his sternomastoid, that's that big neck muscle, by pulling feathering lines like that. But now it's getting kind of busy and I don't want it that busy, so they're gone. I'm hitting save. And now we'll move down. Also, I'll zoom out. Now we'll get down to the fun stuff, his torso. All right, get the brush. So you got his chest. So Al has the bottom of the pec coming across. So this is where individual style, I just do a nice swoop like that. A little thicker here to show the mass on this pec. I'm going to outline it first. Oh, brush was way too small. I was wondering what was happening. So I'm going to outline the pec like that. And then outline the shadow. That's the shadow from his arm. This is a shadow from his pec. See, I cut that in. Don't like it. And this is why I like inking traditionally, because a lot of this stuff I would just get right on the first pass. This line right here indicates his shoulder, and it's kind of thick, so I'm going to keep it that way. Harden it up some. He's got this big shadow from his cape here. It's not that accurate, but I'm going to be respectful to it and keep it there. So pop it in like that. This is a heavier line indicating the bicep contour. I didn't do it as heavy as he has because the light's coming this way, and if it was me, I would actually show the tricep, but I'll stick to what he has. This indicates a massive forearm muscle like that. Let's just get the belt in. All right, so then on his abs, I'm going to indicate a center line for his chest. Lightly, though, because I don't want to obstruct the Superman symbol too much. Just little tapers off of the bottom of it to show the form. That kind of helps show the form and how it wraps around. On his abs, a little indication of the bottom of the rib cage, kind of like he drew. Like that. A little bit of the center line of his ab muscles. Like that. And then let's see. Oh, he's got the forearm muscle over here. So have it come out and taper it some like that. I'm going to change the shadow because the shadow wraps around. It curves into this muscle and then it curves back out as it comes down. And that shows more of the form in a cleaner way. Oh, he also has a shadow over here on his hand from his body. So I'll throw that in. I am going to do this guy's sleeve and hand so I can fill that black in right here that Al has, the shadow. So I'll outline it. This dude's sleeve, top, so I'm going to do it thinner. But then the bottom, I'll do thicker. And then the cuff here has those little pleats in it because it's elastic. So I will actually kind of indicate that by not one smooth brushstroke, but little pulls like that to kind of gives it this little texture. Same on the outside. Thin to thick on each little one, but as the curve wraps around, I get heavier like that. And then here's the sleeve. Oops. You see a little bit of the opening. And it's going to cast a little shadow. And then he's got it really penciled in underneath fat because of the lighting. So I'll stick right to that. I love that. And then this is a pull from the material. And this is a little bit of stitching here. And you can see, you can clean things up. A little bit of erasing. And then little things I like to do, because this cuff of this sleeve is dimensional, I'll do a little erasing right there, like that, to show that there's a thickness. If you look at your cuff on your shirt, there's a thickness to it. So by doing that, you show it. And then he's got some wrinkles here. I'm going to do and then for the sleeve, you can see he even indicated it gets a little thicker as it goes down. So it'll be barely visible, a little heavier, a little heavier. And then as it wraps around the form, these are catching a little less light. So they get heavier until it's black like that. And then that helps curve that form on his sleeve. And when I turn off that, you can see it. And it gives it dimension. And as an inker, that's what you're doing, is you're bringing dimension to the artwork. It's not the penciler's job to do line weights. It's their job for full pencils to indicate shadows, but it's not their job to do line weights. That's the inkers. Let's do this hand. Underneath of the finger pointing is going to be heavier. Still, I give it some line weight variation, so it has a little life to it. The top of the finger is going to be lighter. His knuckle is a bone, so because it's a bone and it's solid, like heavy, bony landmark, you can feel your knuckle. I do that a little heavier. And then the tip of the finger, nice and light. Like that. I don't even mind the broken line. I'll give a little heaviness to that knuckle joint on the finger. The skin that wraps around is going to be a little heavier. He's got the little overlap of the skin from the thumb. Thumb comes down. I did that heavy because he's got this black right here, so it doesn't matter. Thumb wraps around. And because it's going to be butted up to this black, it doesn't matter if I get heavy with it. And even when I'm making traditionally, I'll just get heavy. So when I fill that black in, I've got this nice fat line already there to butt up against. And in this bottom of his wrist, I'm going to do a little heavy because it's not catching the light. And then here is the middle finger knuckle. So a little thin there, heavier there. And top of the hand, lighter, comes to the wrist. Once again, a little thinner there, thicker at the bottom where it touches the wrist, and then the wrist of the forearm going back, I'll start thin and get a little thickness. And that gives you that line weight variation contrast. And then we've got the middle finger we can see here coming out. So nice and thin, the light's hitting it. Thicker as it wraps around. And then you can see a little indication of the thumbnail. And even if I couldn't, I would probably still draw it because I know it's there. And when I turn that off, you can see, and I'll blow it up, you can see the line weight variations going on. And then he had it indicated, and I'm not going to turn it back on. I guess I can. You can barely see there's this little line here. And when you bend your thumb at that last joint on your finger, this shows a little overlap. So you want it to be barely there like that. And it just barely shows it. And you'll see it when I turn it off. And then there's the meat of the thumb, and he's got that indicated with this nice little curve right here. I don't like that line, so only needs one. Here's another thumb right here. This is the other thumb bone joint he's indicating. So I'm going to do it very subtle. Even carve it out some. I don't like the shape of it. There, that's better. And then something I do, you don't have to, but this knuckle right here from the first one, I'm going to just indicate a little overlap of that tendon like this, going back to the wrist, because it creates a little more depth. And there you go. And now that I look at it, I will thicken this up just a tad. That was a little too thin. That's a little too thick. And let me tell you guys, the brush in Clip Studio really does act and feel like a real brush. Oh yeah, since I added the nail on the thumb, I'm going to add a nail on this finger as well. Real subtle, just like that. Now, the whole reason I did that, like I said, was so I can fill this black in. So I'm going to fill in the few black areas that I have indicated. And then I'm going to do the rendering on Superman. Let's see. I think that was it. Oh, on this other hand of his. So expand the pixels. If I don't expand them because I'm using a brush, there's a chance there could be this slight little white halo, and I don't want that. I want the blacks to be nice and solid like that. And you can't see it, but I can. But there's this little area right here that's white. Now it's not. Okay, let's turn on the pencils again. I'm going to finish this hand real quick before I get going on the rendering. You've got a little knuckle indication on the top of the middle finger knuckle. So, boom. Now, he didn't draw fingernails, but I'm going to do them again. Just wraps around. Nice. His finger's a little pointy down here, so I'm just going to use the erase to square it off some. Carve out that fingernail a little bit. And this is all stuff I would do with whiteout. And then the other knuckle indication, light, knuckle comes down, so it's a little heavier. Knuckle light, heavy. And then I need to draw the outline of these fingers. And this is a style thing. I'm doing them a little bit thinner because I just think it's more pleasant. And there is that line contrast I was talking about. And then same thing, I'm going to just draw in the fingernails very, very lightly. Like that. And then this is, I like doing this too. So he only drew the top, but I'm going to give it the bottom of the knuckle like these over here. like that. Oops, I don't like that. Like that. And then I'm going to have it connect ever so slightly. Because if you look at your fingers, the knuckle comes down, and then you've got this loop, you've got the skin that pulls over like that. And then a little wrinkle here. So when you turn it off, you got the hand nice and simple. All right, now it's driving me crazy that his belt buckle's not done. I'm not going to get into the legs, but I do want to get the buckle done. I could freehand this, which is what I want to do with the brush, or Clip Studio does have elliptical tools you can use to create a nice perfect one. I don't want it to be perfect, so let's see if I can do this freehand. And once again, the nice thing with Clip Studio, if I mess up, I just hit Control Z. So going around the top thin, as it comes around, it's going to get thicker at the bottom. And then I'm going to stop it there and then pull from this edge I started thin and then get thick to match. There. See, I like that. Now, one thing with Clip Studio that I do like, he's got the inner ring, you could say, of the buckle, and that should be the same ellipse. So one thing I do like, and I will do is, and it's quicker, I'll take my lasso and I'll just circle or select that, and I'll copy it, paste it, automatically goes into a new layer, and then I'll scale it. I hit the shift key so it scales uniform, and I make it a little bit smaller like that. And then with my move, I can move it into place like that, and that looks good. So then enter, right? And now I've got that. Now, if I turn off the pencils, and then it's selected a little more than I wanted to, you can see it right there. So I'll erase that little bit. Okay, so that, if I just leave it like that, let me zoom in. If I leave it like that, that indicates a contour line. If you're looking at this like flat laying on a table, a contour line that goes up, cuts in like this, and then goes around like this. And you've got, that's the type of buckle contour if that was laying on a table. However, Wayne drew it to where it cuts back in, which means the contour now, once I finish it, will be just like this. And then if you had x-ray vision like Superman, you would see on the inside that it cuts down and back up. So once again, since I already copied and pasted this once, I'll just paste it again and then scale it under transform, scale, shift, a little bit smaller than the outside one because it's setting back inside like that. And depending on how far you push it back, how deep that is, but you can't go too far because then it would be into Superman's belly. So I'll just do it like this, hit enter, and then just so it doesn't show totally, I'll go around this outline of the second one I did and then back around. And what I'm doing is erasing out this so it really doesn't show at all on that new one I just pasted in, or deleting it out. And then you can see this little bit here. I'm not going to actually white that out because he didn't draw it, but I love doing this stuff. It's not catching light because it's set back in. So I'm going to indicate it black like this and just clean up a little bit. This is where a smaller brush does come in handy. I'll also put these layers back down, so it's back to just one layer of the brush inks. Now, another thing I'll do is, and this I will be doing with white, just cleaning it up some. Okay, so the light's coming from the top, coming down. This is how anal I get. This stuff you'd never see if this was printed, but I'm just cleaning it up. Okay, the light's coming down, so it has this shadow here, but I want this thinner because it's catching light. The first one that I did right in here. So using quote unquote white ink, I'm going to thin that up quite a bit to show that it's catching some light. And even break it. Oh yeah. Let the eye carry through to connect that line. And I did do a little too much whiteout type there, so I want this to connect back. And then your eye connects that. And even though this is freehand, it looks pretty good and it has an organic feel. If I did it with a template, it would look kind of stiff and too perfect. And it's a small belt buckle in the scheme of things. You're not going to be paying attention to it. All right. Let's get into this rendering. Now, this is where even I could do this rendering. In fact, I will. I'll do it with a brush. Also, I'm going to thin up his elbow right here because it just looks a little too thick. Oh, yeah, that's much better. And the point there. Okay. So I've got my brush set on 12. I'm going to do this rendering. This is fine feathering. What the feathering does, it shows the form. So like these lines going down here on his shoulder indicate the shoulder wrapping around. Okay. Now, as an inker, you're not a tracer. And what I mean is you can count these lines. I mean, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 roughly feathering lines. A tracer would literally trace each one, but that's not really your job. It's to go, okay, what you think, what is he doing right here? He's showing the shoulder going down. Okay, well, I'm going to use a brush. I want my lines to go from thin, thick, thin, thick, thin. So I can use them as a guide. Oops, see, I don't even like that. That's just ugly. And that was too thin. Let's try 15. Use them as a guide and just go like this. And I'm getting heavier. And then lighter. I'm heavier here because that's where it really folds into light. And then another thing, and you can kind of see it, is he's got this swoop line here, which indicates the deltoid shape. And I kind of like it. So I could just do this a little bit to help show the shape. And in this, he's showing how the chest curves around. So I'm going to pull thin to thick, just like if I was inking it with a real brush, like that. And then he's got some more feathering going down the chest. And I think I'm going to do it down here and have it fade into the black. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm getting heavier because we'll have it fade into the black like this. And then same on this side. He's got some real faint ones. Same thing. Thinner on the outside because they're fading out. And then as I get more towards the shadow area, and as it wraps around, I'll get thicker like that. That's thinner and then thinner. So it's thinner here because it's It's fading into the black here, so it's thicker, and then it's fading out of the black thinner and disappearing as it goes to the chest, like that. Then you get that feel to it. Another thing I like about Clip Studio, I can just use the eraser tool when I flip my stylus over, and then I can blunt these points by erasing them out. Whereas if I was doing this with raw ink, I would use whiteout to just create a nice sweep along the bottom. And then I'm not really fond of the overlap here, the shoulder muscle, so I'm just going to take it out. I like it better like that. Let's see. Now, let me just show you real quick. You can see on Wayne's pencils, I followed these curves here that he did for the chest. But to me, they're going against the grain. It feels like wood. And when you render wood the wrong way and it's going against the grain, because to me, these lines that he curved like this should be going the other way. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to erase out what I did, because to me, to show you the form of the chest, and I can erase these out. To me, this is the form of the chest, right? It's going like this. And see how these lines are going the other way like this? If you continued them, and that's just, it doesn't fit with his perspective, the way his body is. So let me get all those out. I'm going to erase these out. I want to show you how if I did them the way he drew them, and because I'm the inker here, I'm going to do them with the contour the other way, like I showed you, and I think it'll look better. So once again, I'm going to go thin. And then as I get into the black, I'll get thicker and more into, so they really fade into the black area like that. And then I can take my eraser, clean it up a little down here like that. This one's a little too thin. Thicken that up some. And I'm going to do a little more like that. And now that to me follows the contour much better with what Wayne did. Now let's do the stomach and rib cage and forearms. Okay, on this rib cage down here, on the right side of the screen, the rib cage curves like this, or it can come down like he kind of drew it. So I'm going to do that. Once again, I'm doing thin and then thicker as it goes away from the light. You can see another little curve right here he did. I don't like it. I'm not going to use it. Now that I've done the rendering on his chest, I'm going to actually erase out one of these lines that I did, because to me, it doesn't really fit as well. He's got some rendering coming off the abs this way. And just like I would ink in real life, I pull thin to thick. And as they get closer, I taper them more. And then down on this bottom ab, I'm going to do it again. And he has a little indication here showing the other side of the ab. So I'm just going to do it really lightly. Like that. And then a little cleanup. Let your eye carry that one through. And then here he's got feathering right here showing this other side of the ab. One thing I love about these guys in this time period, they didn't get too wrapped up into quote unquote accurate anatomy and stuff. Smooth that out. That was just bothering me. Much better. So I'm going to stick to what he did. I'm going to do it nice and faint. Oops, don't like that. Because I just want to show a subtle curve. And then here, the rib cage, I'm going to do nice and faint as well, like he did. Because I'm just showing the subtle curve as the rib cage turns away. It's going to be in two different areas. Up here, I'm going to curve it like this, like the rib cage would go. And then down here, I'm going to do it kind of like he did with bigger, broader strokes. Get a little bit longer. And that, turn off what his work, and that, you can see, gives a sense of the form to the figure. I'm doing a little feathering on the bicep here to show it wrapping around. Not a lot. He didn't draw it, but I think it's consistent with his rendering that he's already done. And that's just it. You want to be consistent. There's no cross hatching here, right? He doesn't do cross hatching. So I'm not going to do cross hatching. Oops, I just realized I got to fill this black in right there of his shadow. And then I got to finish it too, because you can see it curves here. It goes behind the thumb or behind the pointer finger, comes down like that. And then I'm going to add this shadow coming off his pec like this. And just clean this up a little bit. Ever so gently. Remember, these pens are pressure sensitive. Okay. When I was a kid looking at art from this time period, I was always like, what are these lines right here? See these like horizontal type parallel lines right here? They're almost parallel. I never knew back then what it was. And it's just showing how the wrist tapers. So you want to do those nice and thin. That's not the greatest, I'll admit, but it gives you a sense of this has more highlight on his forearm here, and this has a gray tone right there too. And he had it on this other side, so I'll do it. And this is an area I could do with a real brush a heck of a lot cleaner and nicer than what I'm doing right now. So I'm not the best inker when it comes to Clip Studio for sure. Now I just don't use it enough for inking. Forgot this shadow. Oh, nice. Let's see. I mean, that's basically it for his torso. I'm going to add a layer real quick just to show you other things I might do. This pretty much is, you know, what Wayne did. Another thing I like about this curved ruler tool, it's great. I will say it's great for symbols. Now, if I was inking the S symbol traditionally, I could use a Micron pen and just pull it freehand. But since I'm doing it digital, I might as well take advantage of this curve tool. That's a number 4 size. That looks good. And then I can just pull it over like this. And to me, it doesn't matter that these are dead weight because it's just the outline of his S symbol. Now, another thing I can do, because this cutouts in here are that shape, right? So what I can do is I can copy that shape, kind of like I did with his belt. I'll have to clean it up some. And I can even go in and take out the center line right here, deselect it so that doesn't get copied. And I can copy it, paste it, make it smaller to where it fits that inner S shape, the outline. And then I can do it so it's not perfectly the same size, because he doesn't have it that way. And this side I'd pull out just a little more there, like that, and then I would hit enter. And then I can go in with this again, and this does look a little too technical, but that's okay, and put in the other curves that it has. Then I could try just freehanding it as well with in Clip Studio, but I think this is a fun exercise to show you guys. And I've used this curve tool before a bunch, so I know like how I want to do these curves, you know, where to stop and start, I should say. You see I'm doing it in pieces here. See, that's not that great, but I'll show you how to fix that. And this is sticking with the way he drew the S. It's definitely not perfect. I'm curving it a little more like that one. I just don't like it all. That's ugly. Technically, I think that is supposed to touch. See if I can make this work, or if I need to do another one. Oh, no, that might work. Yeah, it's good. Oops, that's supposed to come from this corner. This also loses a little bit of the charm of these golden age artists with you know, how they drew like the symbols and stuff. But I've never done an S symbol this way, so I figured it'd be a fun experiment. And then you just go in with the old eraser tool. That's a pretty big brush, but I've got the control. I can do this. And you erase out the black line where you wouldn't see it. Gotta be very gentle. Another way is I could just lasso these shapes out. I could use white, you know, a pen with white ink, but I'll just use the eraser. And I'm not blowing up large on it, you can see. Because once again, if this was printed, it'd be printed, you know, roughly, was it 30% smaller or something like that. So these little imperfections aren't going to show. You know, and then let's see. You got his S shape. Now, once again, if I was inking it freehand, I use a micron, I could use a brush, I could use a quill. And if I use a quill or a brush, there would be some line weight variation on that logo. But at the same time, there really doesn't need to be. It's a logo. It's fine. I'm going to merge that down, Control S. All right, let's see. All right, now I am going to add another layer just to show you some other type of rendering I would want to add. And if I was younger, in my younger days, when I was like, ooh, more line work, I probably would have. But, if this was a job for a company or something, this torso would be done. Okay. In my younger days, though, I would have been like, oh, let's add some more rendering. And I'll show you. And I'll let you be the judge of, should it stay like this or should I add more rendering? I'm doing it on a separate layer so I can delete it and you can see the difference easier. So like on his bicep here, towards the bottom of the bicep, I'd probably add a little more feathering. This is all stuff obviously Wayne did not draw, but the nice thing, once again, the nice thing about pencils this tight or this loose is it gives the inker more room to play and add his personal style. So that is what I'm doing now. So instead of having this solid black right here for his bicep, I'd pull off a little feathering line like, let's see, that. It kind of smooths it out some, and I do one down here too, like that. I would definitely go even on Wayne's. I can't erase anything on this layer unless I did it, so I'm not going to. Up here with this muscle, forearm muscle, I would do the same thing. I would add that to it. And then just to show how this muscle curves around the forearm, I might do something rendering like this to show how it curves around. And then as it gets into the shadow area, like everything, I would thicken it up until it goes away. And then to smooth it out, as this muscle ties in up here into the upper arm, I might add rendering like this. On his chest here, from the center line that I did, I'd probably do a little bit of feathering to match the feathering I already did on the other side of his chest, just to turn the form a little bit more. Like that. In fact, I don't even need the layer on of the original pencils. I'd go in here and I would add that to smooth it out. I might, to show another, the indication where the clavicle and shoulder kind of connects up, I might add something like this. It basically a little more muscle definition there. Generally, when you have light going into dark, you have feathering. Cast shadows have a solid line, but light here doesn't. So I'd probably add a little bit of feathering right here to transition from light to dark smoother. Now, if I was inking this on paper, I could pull these feathering lines right through the finger and then just white out, but that works. And see, that gives the light to dark transition a nice fade. I might indicate his Adam's apple a little more with some feathering lines. Beef that up a little more. I might also do some here just to wrap the chest more, like that. Coming off his face here, I might just pull feathering like that because it adds to the form a little bit more that wasn't there. Even on the umpire dude, a little overlap here of the thumb. Oh, no, I don't like those. Just to show some of the form here, add some feathering like that. And then on this guy, because he's older, I would definitely do this. And then here, to show he's a little older, I would add these lines here, which kind of sink in his cheek a little bit more. And then I could, because he is a little older and he's yelling, I could add something in like that. Little skin pull. If I was using white out, oh, I can't, oh, I can use white paint over top. I would do that to indicate that this pops up some on his neck. And you do another little thinner one there. A little thinner. Now that guy's really giving it to Superman. Now, I wouldn't do this, but from a comical standpoint, that's funny. Don't spit in my face. And then, if I really want to show a strength in Superman's jawline, you got that cheek muscle. You can feel it on the side of your face right here when you clench. Yeah, it's thick. So I could add that with some faint lines, kind of like the ones I did there. And this all gets into, now I'm really doing more finishes slash embellishing because I'm adding these little touches. And this guy, he's pissed, so you'd see some wrinkle on his forehead for sure. And then this indicates a little thickness to his brow. And then, like on his hat, even though he didn't do it, I could add some feathering on his hat. First, I do this. I don't want it black because I don't want to make the light that strong. So that's kind of like where the light's hitting. And then you can see I'm getting heavier as the lines go down away from the light. But that basically, light's coming down. You got the core light here, and then this is kind of indicating reflected light. So lots of stuff. If I want to indicate more on his neck, how the neck curves around, you do that. The sternomastoid, how it connects in. And then, like I said, I could really beef up Superman's neck, do a little more of a solid line like that. And then fade the muscle out. A little bit of rendering here. and it's indicating the muscle wrapping around and then fading. And just see where the cape is. Oh yeah, see, I'm into the cape. So I am going to do that cape outline actually on the lower layer. There. See, so all this stuff wouldn't matter. So I can take that out. I like that, but this looks weird. So that's out. But I like the sterno there. And then let me go back to the real layer with this cape. And it overlapped a little too much. That's white out. And then if I wanted to really break up his neck muscles more because he's Superman, I could indicate the muscle that's right here. I could do a little feathering here as it where it fades into his neck. And let's see, is there anything else that I would do? Oh yeah, on this guy, for these wrinkles right here, this just helps show the curve of the form as well. Same here. Oh, I'm doing them on the wrong layer. Darn it. I think I did those in the wrong layer too. I did. Okay. Anyhow, I'm not going to go back and do those neck muscles again. They were on the wrong layer, but I will do these again. This just helps show the form, the curve of the sleeve. And I like it. I think it's cool. Like that. So, hour and a half. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. Oh, and the whole time, see how the paper was curved? Because that's generally how I work. My paper at an angle like that. That's the original. Okay, so I didn't get to do it in pen to show you that style. So I think we'll have a part 2 where I'll ink the exact same stuff that I inked here, except I'll use the pen tool and I'll use the, let's see, G pen tool, which is kind of like a Hunt 102. And I'll ink the exact same thing with the G pen to show you the different look a pen would get. So this is all brush. Okay, so I will ink the exact same thing next time on a new layer labeled pen. I'm going to label this layer Andy's Editions. So if you want, in the comments, tell me, do you like that? This is pretty much what Wayne, I keep saying Wayne Boring. This is Al Plastino. Do you like pretty much me just sticking to what Al Plastino drew with only adding a few touches here and there of, I guess, my style? Or do you like it better when I really went in and it's not even really, but I did go in and add more of my personal touch to it? So yeah, let me know in the comments which one you like better. I am torn, to be honest. I like them both because I'm a big fan of Alex Toth, who is very simple, and this is way over rendered for Alex Toth, but I also like a lot of rendering and stuff. So yeah, so let me know, and we'll continue in a part 2 where I use the quill pen to ink the exact same stuff so you can see the difference, and anything else if you want to bring up in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys. Of course, let me get over here, remove this. Hello. Of course, guys, I do have Lilineth Infernal Conflict still live, still funding on Indiegogo. Go check it out. That's the main cover. Lilineth is in the abyss. We learned so much about her as she is at a war with the demon lord Vixarion. That's my cover. A great cover by John Malin as well. And it's still up on Kickstarter, where you can get Billy Tucci and Dan Lawless's great cover on Kickstarter only. T-shirts are available. We've got a foil cover, a collector's box where you can get all the goodies at a great rate. And there's a few copies left. I think 6 or 7 copies left of the retro newsprint edition of Lilineth Infernal Conflict, the whole book printed on newsprint, stapled, limited to 100 copies, signed and numbered with a certificate of authenticity. Even colors are done differently. So guys, go check it out. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share. Go back, Lilineth. Until chapter 2 of this video. Bye-bye, everybody.